Alan, you talk about the Toronto Rehab Institute. Can you tell us a little more about your experiences there?
Yeah, well, the Toronto Rehab Institute, it's kind of a strange title. They may as well just call it the WSIB Doctors Institute, because that's what it is. The doctors who work there basically get paid 95% of their income from the WSIB. So it's just WSIB's way of rationalizing their decisions. This is how injured workers like myself have come to understand it. And so what they do, what WSIB does is within a year or so of your claim, they want you to be evaluated by their doctors. And so their doctors being those at the Toronto Rehab Institute. And for anyone starting a new claim with WSIB, I would highly recommend to not fall for that and not attend that institute, because it's your right to see the doctors you choose, but they use scare tactics to get you to attend this place, and next thing you know, you show up and you're being diagnosed by perhaps 15 doctors of various specialties or so-called specialties, including neuropsychologists and any other doctors for the type of injuries that you're claiming to have. And you walk away from there realizing, wow, this was an interrogation of your entire life, not about your injury or of the workplace incident that led to your injury, or not about the injuries themselves, but they want to know everything about your life from the time you were born until the present day. So nothing is off limits. Your life, your entire life becomes part of your claim. And what they're looking for is anything that could indicate a possible explanation for the pain you're suffering. And so what it comes down to is they're looking for pre-existing conditions, injuries that occurred prior to your workplace accident or injury, as you might call it. And so that's why they're digging into your past as much as they can, to find ways to justify denying your claim.
Is it in Canadian law that you must see a WSIB doctor in order to benefit from a claim?
No, but they will word it, and they will be actually blatant about it. In my case, they did say to me, if you don't go to this Toronto Rehab Institute, you could be cut off. They use this a lot. In the same way that when they forced me back to work against doctor's orders, Larisse Lovemore, the case manager, who, by the way, fabricated, falsified medical information, falsified doctors' opinions, and so forth, and I have all the paperwork to prove that, and phone conversations with doctors who claimed that she was lying. In the same way that that case manager forced me back to work against doctor's orders, saying, if you don't go back, we could cut you off. It's a threat. And they use the same threat. If you don't go to see our doctors, they don't say it's their doctors, but you know it. You figure it out after a while. Then you know that you could be cut off. So you fall for that because you're new. You don't know. You know. You figure all this out after 4 years.
Sure.
But when you're new, you just go for it. And next thing you know, you're reading these reports that are, in a lot of cases, inaccurate. So they take information that you share with them, not realizing that they're working for WSIB, and they manipulate that to deny you, or to allow WSIB to deny you parts of your claim or whatever. But you know, and they're using a lot of hearsay. Like in some cases, the leading neurologist, the neuropsychologist, she used the words of my case manager, who is claiming to have had conversations with my retinal surgeon that never even took place. But they're using that information. They're using that as part of their justifications and so forth. It's a real farce, and it's so well. It's fraud. So they're making statements based on hearsay information from a case manager. It's unprofessional and it's fraudulent because it's not based on fact. And that they're using that information and those reports that they come up with, because at the end of your visit there, they come up with a full report and recommendations. And in those recommendations, they come out and say, yes, Alan's fully recovered from his head injury and he's ready to return to work now. So I decided, wait a minute, I'm going to go see my own neuropsychologist. So I looked up, leading neuropsychologist, Ottawa, where I was living at the time. And I called her up and I spoke with her and I said, I know that they're lying on this report. This is wrong. I'm still suffering from my brain injury. And she agreed to see me. But she warned me. She says, I have to tell you that I actually do a lot of work for WSIB. But she says, I will give you my word that I will do an unbiased assessment of you. You'll just have to trust me. And fortunately, she had a lot of integrity, and she did stick to her word, and she put me through a thorough examination and a thorough IQ test and so forth. And she determined that the testing that I had done at the Toronto Rehab Institute 6 months earlier, from that point to that, my brain had actually recovered considerably in that 6-month period, which means that my brain had not fully recovered when I went to the Toronto Rehab Institute. So that's false information. And I had been telling them that. You're wrong. You're wrong. I know that I'm not recovered. And so she put me through the IQ test as part of that process of evaluating me. And she said, you know, Alan, your IQ is above average, which is promising, but she says, I feel that you're still recovering. And this, we're talking 2.5 years after, or 2+ years after the injury. And she says, you're still recovering. And there was a lot involved in that whole assessment to allow her to come up with that conclusion. But she says, you have a very below average processing time. In other words, yes, you're functioning at a fairly high level in terms of cognition, but your processing time doesn't equate. It's really, really slow. Mm-hmm. And so she was able to come up with a much more...
It sounds like she had the capacity to really assess your condition in great detail and to be able to differentiate.
She had a much more objective assessment.
Right.
And so based on that assessment, WSIB finally agreed that, okay, yes, there was some inconsistencies, some errors made in that report from Toronto. But you know, but you're always on trial. You're always on trial, and it takes a toll. And before you know it, you're suffering from, you know, anxiety and so forth.
Right. So there's certainly room for a lot more accountability and outside assessment. I guess
Absolutely.
It's not unlike asking Al Capone to watch the bank for you.
Well, when you're talking about falsifying medical information, lying about conversations that didn't even take place with medical professionals, and putting that on your file and using that to make decisions, well, that's criminal. We're talking about criminal activity. Falsifying medical documents, that's criminal. That's a criminal act.
Right. Would you be willing to say that there could be a breach of doctor-patient confidentiality as well, with sharing third-party information? Or?
Oh yes. There's a lot of that. On social media, it's only in recent times that WSIB injured workers injured workers across Canada, for that matter, have gotten together and shared their stories, and you hear a lot of that.
Okay.